More than 5 years had passed since my wife of 15 years, Jennifer, a former branch manager at a local bank, asked for a divorce. She claimed she no longer loved me, insisting there was no one else and that we had simply grown apart. I doubted her explanation, but never uncovered evidence to contradict it. Shortly afterward, I overheard her discussing big changes during a phone call. We eventually agreed to share custody of our daughters, who were 14 and 12 at the time. After private discussions, both girls chose to live with her. Today, while skimming the newspaper, an article caught my attention. It featured Jennifer Taylor, attending a prominent charity event in New York alongside her husband, Nestor Taylor, senior vice president. Jennifer herself had become a junior VP. Also pictured were my daughters, Angela and Aubrey, now 19 and 17, unmistakably despite the passage of time. Jennifer had reached the social status she always seemed to crave. Now that for it, ironically, Nesta had been a casual acquaintance from her banking days, back when we were still married. Now my daughters even carried his last name instead of mine. My first instinct was to reach out to my assistant, Alice, who happened to be Jennifer's distant cousin, to confirm what I had read. However, Alice was off that day, having taken personal time. On the day our divorce was supposed to be finalized, Jennifer hadn't even appeared in court. When I asked my lawyer why, he explained that the judge required both of us to testify about our custody agreement. Jennifer's lawyer then revealed that she had moved out of state with our daughters without my consent. I had never approved of such a move. When the Judge Reed, asked if I had agreed to this relocation, I made it clear I had not. The mood in the courtroom shifted immediately as Judge Reed's expression turned cold. "Could you step outside and try calling them?" he instructed. I left the courtroom and attempted to reach them, but all 3 phone numbers had been disconnected. Checking their social media profiles, I discovered I had been blocked everywhere. Returning to the courtroom, I informed my lawyer, who relayed the details to Judge Reed. Without hesitation, the judge issued a warrant for Jennifer's arrest on charges of parental kidnapping and suspended the divorce proceedings until she could appear in court. Jennifer's lawyer tried to downplay the situation, suggesting it wasn't a serious matter and could be resolved by verifying the custody agreement. But Judge Reed dismissed the argument, stating that I had clearly never consented to the children leaving the state. Then came a wave of accusations from Jennifer's family, alleging that I had been abusive toward our daughters. Her former colleagues at the bank also appeared willing to back these claims, but just as her way would be later. Her reputation seemed to shield her from scrutiny, and people readily believed her stories. Meanwhile, I was left to watch my life unravel. Interviews with my daughters revealed no mention of abuse, but Jennifer's family continued spreading rumors, isolating me further. Over time, Judge Reed and I developed a friendship, bonding over a shared love of fishing. That evening, I brought the newspaper to Judge Reed's house and showed him the article. His face paled as he scanned the image. "Good Lord," he muttered. "They've been right in front of us all these years." You immediately reached for his phone. His wife, Amy, joined me on the patio, handing me a beer. "He's on the phone with the FBI," she said. "What did you show him?" "A photo of Jennifer with her new husband and my daughters," I replied. "It's the first time I've seen her in 5 years." Amy nodded gravely. "This is a federal case now. Outermost and interstate flight with a kidnapping charge." When I asked why the bank hadn't helped locate her, she explained that they had cited a legal ruling, claiming it was a family matter and outside their jurisdiction. Emotionally drained, I left their home, telling the judge he could contact me at my office the next morning. That night felt endless. I couldn't stop wondering if there had been more between Jennifer and Nestor while we were still married. Angela had already been born when Jennifer started working at the bank, but timing gnawed at me. Until Jennifer came to the bank for the meeting, Peggy always felt lost in the personal matters of the deceased. The next day, Alice returned to work. Over the years, she had grown increasingly frustrated with Jennifer's actions, and always believed me, showing unwavering support. I wanted to confide in her about everything, but held back, knowing she deserved a life free of my chaos. Alice, with her auburn hair, warm smile, and kind spirit, was a rare gem. Any good man would be fortunate to have her. But for now I kept my admiration private, unwilling to pull her into the mess. Work provided a welcome distraction that day, keeping my thoughts occupied. Late in the afternoon, Alice knocked on my door. "William, 2 men from the FBI are here to see you." "Should I let them in?" she asked. "Yes, of course. I've been expecting them," I'd replied, standing to greet them. The agents introduced themselves as Agent Diaz and Agent Horton. "We're here to gather information about the case," one explained. I laid out the details, recounting my history with Jennifer and her new husband, and expressed concerns about the girl's last name changes. I suggested DNA tests to confirm paternity, and described how Judge Reed had put the divorce on hold when Jennifer failed to appear, filing parental kidnapping charges in the process. "You'll also need to check whether she filed for divorce in New York and validate her current marriage," I advised. "So the divorce was never finalized?" Agent Horton asked. "Correct," I confirmed. "She ignored the judge's order to appear." "Did you ever authorize her to leave the state with the children?" Diaz inquired. The girl journeyed back to the town and found that people were starting to ask about her from henceforth. "Not at all," I responded, explaining how her lawyer had informed me of the move after the fact. I described how I had tried to call her, only to find her numbers disconnected and social media accounts blocking me. She moved out of state before the divorce was finalized and remarried almost immediately. "This seems premeditated," Diaz observed. "That contradicts her statements during a New York interview," Horton added. "When was your last contact with her?" he asked. 2 weekends before the final court date," I said. "They came to collect their belongings. Since then, I've received no official updates, no legal notices, nothing. As far as I know, I'm still legally married." Horton nodded thoughtfully. We might be able to pursue charges for falsifying adoption documents." Diaz remarked on my earlier mention of adoption paperwork and noted I hadn't received any updates. "Alice, could you draft a letter confirming my signature for the FBI?" I asked her. Diaz then inquired, "Are you still at 87654 Yale?" "No," I explained. "I sold that property under a court order after experiencing disturbances. I've since relocated to a quieter neighborhood near Pinewood Lake for my safety." After the agents left, I brought Alice up to speed on everything. She was shocked, a mix of surprise and cautious optimism crossing her face, but we both knew there were far too many unanswered questions. "Tonight, I'll be turning off my cell phone," I told her. "If this situation starts to weigh on you, use your best judgment. You can always reach me on my home phone if there's an emergency." Alice had grown to loathe her cousin Jennifer, especially for the way she had tarnished my reputation and severed my ties with family and friends. Over the years, Alice had witnessed firsthand the damage Jennifer's actions had caused, watching me endure in silence while pouring myself into work and expanding my client base threefold. I'd first met Alice when she was 14, and I was 19 at a family event where Jennifer's engagement was the main focus. Even then, Alice had predicted the marriage wouldn't last, noting how much I valued family, while Jennifer chased status. Years later, after her own husband's passing, Alice confided in me, finding solace in my support. Over time, she began to envision growing old with me, but the shadows of my past left me hesitant to move forward. Jennifer's disappearance, along with our daughters, had sparked cruel rumors in town. Some accused me of heinous acts I had never committed. One evening, while I was dining alone at a local restaurant, Jennifer's father approached unexpectedly. He admitted Jennifer had finally confessed that I had never harmed our daughters, and that she had fabricated those accusations to justify her departure. I stared at him coldly. "If you want me to take your words seriously, I'll need written statements from your family members," I said. "Many people here think I'm guilty of something I didn't do." He walked away, and I thought to myself, a 2-minute conversation can't undo 5 years of suffering and lies. Moments later, the waitress who had served me approached, and I objected. In the end, she handed the check, returned me to my squad, and, "Mr. Roberts," she began, "I went to school with your daughters. I overheard what he said. They had no idea what was going on. I remember seeing him and other relatives from your wife's family packing everything up the Friday before they left." "Thanks for telling me," I replied. "I've gotten used to being lied to over the years." I made sure to leave her a generous tip. That weekend, I found solace fishing by the lake, enjoying the peaceful surroundings and treating myself to fresh rainbow trout each evening. When Monday arrived, I was in the office early, brewing coffee, when Alice walked in. She poured herself a cup and sat across from me, unusually cheerful. Looking back, I said, "Jennifer and I got married right after she graduated high school. Angela was born not long after. At the time, I was flipping houses, and she was working her way up at the bank." "I heard what you told her father," Alice replied. "Everyone did. My phone rang all weekend." "Can you blame me after all the harm her family caused?" I asked. "That's why I demanded notarized statements to clear my name." "Are you planning legal action?" she asked. "Yes," I said. "I want to restore my reputation and restrict their access to funds." "It'll be interesting if those calls turn into statements," she said thoughtfully. "Most people mean well, but lies have a way of sticking." I offered a faint smile. "Maybe guilt will drive them to tell the truth. Maybe." As I left the office, I thanked Alice for her unwavering support. She had been my rock throughout this ordeal. By Thursday's lunch break, I had 24 notarized statements confirming Jennifer had lied about the alleged abuse to justify her departure and manipulate her family. Alice also tracked down Jennifer's current address and employer. "Your appointment with your lawyer is at 2, she informed me. "They'll serve her before moving forward with charges and freezing her assets." I couldn't help but think, Alice leaves nothing to chance. God help Jennifer if they ever meet face to face. Later that afternoon, around 4:30, I returned to the office with champagne and glasses. Alice's recommended lawyer had agreed to take my case. I handed him everything. Old court records, audio recordings, Judge Reed's rulings, signed affidavits, and the warrant for Jennifer's arrest. I even included a news article detailing her new life and her connections to Mester. After reviewing the materials, the lawyer remarked on the bank's involvement. We could sue them for facilitating her actions, he suggested. If one suit covers both, count me in, I replied. He chuckled. Well, Americans are known for suing over anything. Alice and I raised our glasses, but before we could toast, my phone rang. It was the judge. Hey, Solomon, how's everything? I answered. The FBI is moving forward with a grand jury against Jennifer and Nestor next Wednesday, he informed me. They'll request custody of Aubrey and conduct DNA tests for everyone involved. Thank you, Solomon, I said, feeling a wave of relief. And my divorce? I asked hopefully. I'll finalize it once she's brought in, even if it's by video, he assured me. Alice, sitting nearby, asked, Can he jail her? The FBI will handle the kidnapping charges, I explained, but he can hold her in contempt of court. I nodded, adding, This waiting has been torture. 5 years of it. A few more weeks won't make much difference. Oh, the week flew by. By Thursday morning, my lawyer confirmed Jennifer had been served and her assets were frozen. That afternoon, I received a call from Agent Horton regarding DNA testing, and on Saturday, while I was fishing, Alice called with news. Jennifer had been detained by the FBI. Curious, I went to the office to read an article detailing the charges against her and Nestor. They faced multiple counts of kidnapping, defined as using deception to keep someone against their will for personal gain. Jennifer also faced charges for forging documents to hide our daughters under Nestor's care. Nestor, leveraging his role at the bank, had obstructed my attempts to locate them. Jennifer had even fabricated allegations of abuse to justify her actions. Local officers admitted many people believed I had harmed my daughters and evaded justice. The article brought me some closure. A regional newspaper reached out, expressing sympathy for the ordeal I'd endured. My name is partly cleared, I told myself, already planning to sell my business and start over elsewhere. As I reviewed case evidence, I learned Angela, my eldest daughter, had been stunned by the arrests and the revelation that I was still legally married to her mother. Angela left her current city after reading about the case, grappling with unanswered questions about her mother's decisions. Later that evening she visited our old family home, but caught the attention of the local police. "Who are you, and why are you waiting here?" an officer asked. "I'm Angela Taylor," she replied calmly. "I was just waiting for the sheriff's department to leave so I could speak with my father." "And your father's name?" the officer asked. "William Roberts," she answered, watching his expression shift. Detective Reynolds raised an eyebrow in surprise. "Oh, wow," he said. "Tom, go tell the others to put on some coffee. Miss Taylor, I'm Detective Reynolds. I know your father well. What brings you back now?" "Partly what I read in last night's article," Angela replied. "I've got a copy in the car if you'd like to see it." "Please do. It'll help me understand your side of the story," Reynolds responded. After retrieving the article, Angela joined him for coffee. As Detective Reynolds read it aloud, the room grew silent, except for his voice. "You believe my dad, don't you?" Angela asked cautiously. "Whoa, for the will, for the dumb, he was down by the third." I was one of the few who did," Reynolds admitted. But by the time your mother's family started spreading those rumors, he was too late. He was stalked, his house was vandalized, and he was attacked. You named the title. I was one of the few who did, Reynolds admitted. But in the South we have our own sense of justice, Angela remarked. Things must have gotten bad for him to leave. They did, Reynolds said. He now lives on a 5-acre property near Pinewood Lake, surrounded by fences, electric wires, and a gate. He hasn't been seen in town, outside of work, for 2 years. Ooh, how can I contact him? Huh? Angela asked. I think I can help with that, Tom interjected. He checked his records for an emergency contact and found a name. Do you know Alice Garcia? He asked Angela. I think she's my mum's cousin. Why? Angela responded. She's the only person who can reach him whenever necessary. They should be his support system through all of this, Tom explained. In fact, she's heading to his office now to meet you, he added, handing Angela the address. Angela thanked them and left to find Alice, who harbored deep resentment toward Jennifer for all the pain she had caused her father. One officer muttered to another, what kind of woman would do this to her own family? When Angela met Alice, she recounted a vivid memory. It was 4 a.m. on a Saturday, when Mom woke Aubrey and me. She rushed us to pack a few things, calling it a surprise trip to New York. Still half asleep, we were too confused to understand what was happening. We had no idea what was really going on, Angela said. Some of our relatives have since admitted they knew about her relationship with Nestor, but they thought it was just a friendship. Angela paused before continuing. I remember catching her chatting with him, but I didn't realize they worked together. She said they'd met at a regional conference and hit it off. Half an hour into the drive, I noticed we didn't have our phones when I confronted her. She claimed she'd been granted sole custody and that we were moving to New York because of her promotion and transfer. At the time, I believed her. Alice listened carefully, recognizing hard truths in Angela's account. I also asked about our laptops, Angela added. She told us they'd been packed with the rest of our things, but we never saw them again. We drove for 2 days to New York. When we neared the city, she pulled a new phone from her purse, one with a New York number. Angela explained how they eventually arrived at Nestor Taylor's house, later discovering he had orchestrated her mother's so-called promotion to bring them closer together. Meanwhile, back home, their relatives were told to dispose of all their belongings except family photos, which were eventually mailed to them. I was unpacking. My sister and I found adoption papers, Angela said. Nestor told us our parents had agreed to it and that he and Mom were getting married that night. Then Mom claimed he was our biological father and urged us to accept him. Alice sighed. Angela, I believe you. I've heard bits and pieces of this from other family members recently. We only knew the school district had shared copies of your records so you could start fresh there. Now that Jennifer's been located, people are starting to talk. Alice added, just so you know, I recorded our conversation. I'll share it with the FBI and your father. Let's grab an early dinner at the diner, she suggested. While we're there, look over these notarized statements. If your mother lied about your dad, could she have lied about Nestor Taylor too? Stepping out briefly to give Angela space, Alice forwarded their conversation to me and my civil lawyer, knowing its impact could be profound. She also sent it to the FBI. From a distance, she watched Angela deep in thought, not reaching out to anyone. A moment later I texted Alice, "I'll be waiting for you both, thank you." She responded before stepping out again to allow Angela more time to review the statements. When Alice returned, Angela sat silently, her expression heavy with contemplation. "Alice, why did my mother tell everyone that my dad had been hurting us for years?" Angela asked quietly. Alice sighed. "Your mom knew the family didn't fully approve of him, and she used that to justify disappearing so suddenly. She also knew your dad would try to find you, and he did. He even took legal action against the bank to get her location. He won initially, but the decision was overturned on appeal," Alice explained. "We only learned about her marriage and your name changes a few weeks ago, after your photo was published in the newspaper. Your dad served them the next day. Over the past 5 years, he's been relentlessly harassed because of her actions. Twice we almost lost him." "How is he?" Angela asked, her voice soft. Alice looked down. "He's changed. He's lost a lot of weight, and the stress has turned most of his hair white. He shut down his social media and removed his name from his business page because of the threats and hate. He used to be outgoing, but now he keeps to himself, even shopping in other towns to avoid attention. Things are getting better for him, but it's slow. People here still think he's guilty of something awful." "Does he have anyone in his life?" Angela asked hesitantly. Angela's voice was quiet as she asked, "Does he have anyone in his life?" Alice shook her head. "With the reputation your mother gave him, who would dare? He's spent over 5 years fighting off lies that can't be proven or disproven." Angela sat silently, processing everything. "Every time he tried to defend himself, it only made things worse," she finally said. "People had already decided he was guilty, and we vanished so quickly that it made her accusations seem true. They planned it all perfectly, and he paid the highest price." Alice's voice wavered as she added, "At one point, I was afraid he might not make it through." Angela turned to her, her expression softening with understanding. They left together for the diner. As they walked to the car, Angela paused. "Thank you," she said. Alice looked at her, surprised. "For what?" "For having the courage to stand by and love my dad all these years," Angela replied, her words bringing Alice to tears. Angela reached over to comfort her, and together they headed to meet me at the restaurant. Oh. Meanwhile, I sat anxiously in my car outside, replaying Alice and Angela's conversation in my mind. The truth was real, but it was still hard to grasp fully. When I finally saw them pull in, my hands trembled as I fumbled to light a cigarette. Angela had grown into a beautiful young woman, her features strikingly reminiscent of my own mother, a bitter-sweet reminder since my family had distanced themselves from me not long after Jennifer and the girls disappeared. Finishing my cigarette, I turned off the car and braced myself for what I knew would be one of the hardest moments of my life. The waitress, who had served me weeks earlier, now working as the hostess, greeted me at the entrance. "Angela's here," she said softly. "I talked to her and her friend and seated them toward the back. Are you here to join them?" I nodded, and she continued, "She has her back to us. I'll show you to their table." Following her, I spotted Alice first, who smiled warmly as I approached. Taking a deep breath, I sat beside her and gripped her hand for reassurance. For the first time in over 5 years, I looked directly into Angela's bright blue eyes. Words weren't needed. Tears streamed down both of our faces. I had asked the hostess earlier to bring a large flask of their house wine. When it arrived, the waitress poured our first glasses and left us in peace. Angela studied my appearance, noticing the toll the years had taken. Thinner, about 40 pounds lighter, and sporting mostly silver-white hair, I looked far older than my age. With a touch of humour, she said, "Most people would pay a fortune for that look at your age." Her comment broke the tension, and we both laughed softly. Angela stood, and I joined her at the edge of the table, embracing her tightly. "Dad," she whispered. "Angie," I replied, using the nickname I had given her years ago. Once the emotion settled, we ordered food. Angela noticed my dietary changes. "I used to be a meat and potatoes guy," she said with a smile. "Now I opted for a catfish platter and unlimited salad." As Alice and I returned from the salad bar, Angela took the opportunity to speak to me privately. "Dad, Alice loves you," she admitted, "probably more than I do. She grilled me like a drill sergeant to make sure I was being honest. She wasn't going to let you get hurt again. I know I was old enough to find the truth myself, but I didn't. I don't think I'll ever forgive myself for that. Angela, I've had no life to offer anyone these past 5 years," I replied. "People here thought I had done something terrible to all of you and escaped justice. If anything had happened, I might have ended up in prison. That's why, 3 years ago, after being attacked twice and hospitalized, I changed my will to leave everything to you." Alice returned just then, noticing Angela's tears. "What's wrong?" she asked. No, that's wrong. Only to safety. There were 3 diseases. Hertz-Pandier, a gene, motive selfishness, Fitz Epicurus, and Lyme disease. They were both things I hadn't had the courage to face for a long time, but her love kept me going. Soon, both women were wiping away tears. After lunch, we dropped off Angela's rental car and drove to my private home near Pinewood Lake. Angela and Alice admired the view and the layout of the house. When I offered to carry Angela's bags, she declined, giving me and Alice a moment alone. "Why didn't you tell me sooner how you felt?" Alice asked gently. "I couldn't," I admitted. "I was trapped by my past, never knowing what might happen next. Jennifer and Nestor used that uncertainty against me. But now that I'm free from their lies, I can finally offer you a future." Alice squeezed my hand affectionately. Smiling, she said, "Then I guess it's time to put my own home up for sale, because I won't let you sell this place." Later, Angela returned to the room and caught us sharing a kiss. A shy smile crossed her face, as though she felt like an intruder on a tender moment. We spent the next hour catching up. Angela shared that she felt stuck in a business job she didn't enjoy while working toward her master's degree online. She hadn't been dating seriously. "Well, don't you come work with us," I suggested. "We could use your fresh perspective and would be happy to help you start at a junior level. After everything, you deserve the chance." "Are you serious?" Angela asked, surprised. "Absolutely," Alice chimed in, smiling. "We can start you at $45,000 a year." And Angela's eyes filled with emotion. "Wow, I guess I'll be to find a place to live," she said softly. "No rush," I assured her. "There's plenty of room here. But I do expect you to help with chores, just like old times." Her eyes welled up as she said, "Dad, you've always been there for me," she added. "I'll fly back tomorrow to pack and get things in order. If I can find a flight, I should be back by Wednesday, driving my own car." As we exchanged phone numbers, Angela received a text from Aubrey. "Finally got my cell back. FBI holding me until DNA proves if Nestor Taylor's my dad. Found out adoption papers were forged. Angela quickly replied, Dad's moving back home, joining his firm. His number is saved as Sir. Auberly responded, Bring my stuff, including my laptop. Lawyers will handle the rest. Oh, and check today's newspaper. It explains a lot. Angela texted back, Call me when you can. Alice joined me on the patio. How are you holding up? She asked. Oh, overwhelmed, I admitted, pulling her into a hug. And don't I take Angela to pick up a few of my things? Alice suggested. That'll give you time to process everything. I handed her the code for the gate lock and gave her the house keys to make copies. They were gone for 2 hours, giving me the time I needed to finally release the years of pain I'd carried. When they returned, everyone was smiling. I was on the patio grilling steaks with salad ready and potatoes baking, watching them chat and laugh as they unloaded a few belongings warmed my heart. During dinner, Angela mentioned she'd be flying out at 8 a.m. Sunday, and Alice and I agreed to help move more of her things once she returned. As we enjoyed coffee, my phone rang. It was Agent Horton. Mr. Roberts, this is Adam Horton. We've confirmed Aubrey's DNA test. She's yours. She's requested to come home and will arrive in River Bend on Monday at 7:30 a.m. That's wonderful news, I replied, overwhelmed with relief. I told Alice that we would both be there to meet her. Perfect, he responded, adding, Angela's already on her way back. Oh, and Aubrey found the article online, by the way. Then he added, as for Nestor Taylor, he's devastated. Jennifer had completely convinced him she was the one. I asked, what are my daughter's legal names now? Adam reassured me. They're officially Roberts now. We'll be sending the court ruling on Monday so their IDs can be updated. After he ended the call, I felt an overwhelming rush of emotion. Tears filled my eyes, and I paused for a moment to collect myself, while Alice and Angela looked concerned. I reassured them, Aubrey's coming home, and the DNA results confirm she's mine. Both Alice and Angela shared in my happiness. Apparently, Jennifer even had Nestor believing Aubrey was his, I added. Alice shook her head. I always suspected that, she remarked. Angela asked, Did she ever tell anyone the truth? Turning to Angela with a warm smile, I said, I have news for you. You'll need to change your last name back to Roberts. A federal court has ruled that the adoption was invalid. Angela hugged me tightly, clearly relieved. Taylor never felt right anyway, she said with a smile. The next day we saw Angela off as she headed back to pack her belongings for the move. Then Alice and I met with her brothers and their wives, who had volunteered to help move furniture. Since only 2 of the bedrooms in my house were furnished, there was plenty of room for Angela's things. The full story had even been published in Sunday's local newspaper. We joined Alice's family for breakfast in a nearby diner, where her sisters-in-law immediately noticed how happy she seemed. They joked that with Alice's cooking, I'd be putting some weight back on in no time. The owner of the restaurant, a long-time friend, came by to offer his congratulations. William, this meal's on us, he said warmly. With everyone pitching in, we moved everything in one day. Alice's sisters-in-law seemed a little envious of her new home, and we invited them to visit again when we hosted our first housewarming. Early Monday morning at the airport, Alice informed everyone who needed to know that we wouldn't be available. We figured as much after reading Sunday's paper. We responded. I stood at the airport watching as Aubrey stepped off the small plane. She looked both different and the same, wearing jeans and a tank top. The sight of her felt surreal. My little girl who once wore pigtails was now a stunning young woman. The moment she saw me, her face lit up. She ran toward me as the sliding doors opened, shouting, "Daddy!" and leapt into my arms. We let our emotions flow, barely aware of the people around us. Alice turned to a local reporter and said, "That's William Roberts and his youngest daughter. Half the town thought they were gone, but they were kidnapped. This is the first time they've seen each other in over 5 years." Stepping forward, Aubrey addressed the reporter directly. "I'm Aubrey Roberts, and this is my father, William Roberts. 5 years ago, my mother's family took us away from him. Rumors spread that he hurt us, but that's not true. Our dad would never do that. My mother's family might be capable of such things, but not him. Anyone who comes after him will have to face me and my sister, because we stand with him as family." She continued, "When my mother left, she claimed my dad deserved it, but he didn't. He's the most honorable person I know." I introduced Aubrey to Alice, and they embraced warmly. "Angela and I talked a lot yesterday," Aubrey said. "It turns out our mother lied to Nestor too, for our own gain. She almost ruined all our lives. We know you and Dad are considering marriage, and as far as Angela and I are concerned, we want to move forward without letting the past haunt us." Alice's eyes filled with tears. "You couldn't have said it better, Aubrey, and if you promise to be one of my bridesmaids, we'll make it official." "Let's grab breakfast," I suggested, "then we'll go shopping for some new clothes." "Can we go to Denny's?" Aubrey asked. "Is it still open?" "Oh, there's a Waffle House nearby," I replied. She grinned. That works." Watching her eat brought back memories of her childhood. For the first time in years, I felt like I had my life back. My house was no longer just a house. It was a home. Later, while shopping, I wandered off intentionally, leaving Alice and Aubrey to discuss personal items. When they realized I was gone, I was already making my way back. "Where did you go?" Alice asked. "Had to use the restroom," I replied casually. I sat nearby as Aubrey tried on clothes, asking for my opinion. To me, she looked great in everything. After spending $300, we left the store with 2 full bags. Back at the house, Alice took Aubrey upstairs to show her the newly furnished bedrooms. Alice's face lit up when Aubrey chose the room, furnished with her master bedroom set. Later, we relaxed on the patio, sipping cold drinks as the hot morning sunlight filtered in through the windows and glinted off the glass statue of the newly furnished bedrooms. Alice's face lit up when Aubrey chose the room furnished with her master bedroom set. Later, we relaxed on the patio, sitting around the dying fireplace and cracking open the packets of Government black lumber. Taking a small ring box from my pocket, I got down on one knee and caught Alice off guard. "Since I haven't officially asked," I said, opening the box to reveal a 3-ring set, "will you marry me once the divorce is final?" Her eyes sparkled as she said yes, and Aubrey captured the entire moment on video, later sending it to Angela with the caption, "Yes, it fits." About 30 minutes later, Alice got an unexpected call and teared up. She handed me the phone and I realized it was Angela. "Are you already on the road?" I asked. "Left at 4 yesterday. I've been driving almost non-stop," Angela replied. "Less traffic at night and fewer cops. My car cruises fine, just over 100. She reassured me she had Aubrey's things and said, "I'm pulling off to the Riverbend exit now." I sent her directions and shook my head, unsure whether to feel proud or exasperated by her long drive. When Angela arrived, the girls were waiting at the door to greet her. Seeing my 3 daughters together for the first time was overwhelming. Angela immediately inspected Alice's engagement ring. Just then the house phone rang, and I answered it. "William, it's Lenny," he said. "We're swamped. Clients who left because of rumors are coming back, and we're gaining new ones. If this keeps up, we'll need more staff." "That's a good problem to have," I replied. "Angela starts as a junior next week. She's still learning, but working on her MBA. "Can I have her on my team?" Lenny asked. "It'll mean long hours, but she'll learn quickly." I agreed, knowing Angela would gain valuable experience under Lenny, who had risen through the company by promoting hands-on learning and fostering open communication. "Alice and I are taking the rest of the week off," I mentioned. "We have a lot to figure out. Our engagement, the girls coming home, and handling some legal matters, including getting Aubrey enrolled in school." Lenny sounded surprised. "Engaged?" he asked. "Oh, that reminds me. There's a letter from the FBI for you. Can you drop by around 5 to pick it up?" "Definitely. Thanks for letting me know," I replied before ending the call. At 4:30, the four of us headed into town. We decided to celebrate our first official family dinner at a seafood restaurant Angela and Aubrey picked. On the way, I stopped at the office and asked Angela if she'd like to see where she'd be working. She agreed, so we all went inside. The receptionist guided us to the largest conference room, where a huge cake and a banner reading "Congratulations" awaited. Angela met her future boss, and everyone seemed delighted to see us together, noticing that my daughters had already started referring to Alice as Mom. We arrived at the restaurant around 6:30, just in time for their all-you-can-eat shrimp special. My daughters lost count of how many they ate, while I amused myself by eating raw lemons as if they were oranges. During dinner, we reviewed the court ruling. The first section highlighted that the document used for the adoption could be easily accessed online at legalaop.com/register. The document puts the name at handwriting experts found breaks in the ink flow of my signature and inconsistent with how I normally sign, proving it had been traced. The third pointed out that I never used my full middle name in signatures. Lastly, the date on the document was clearly after they had already left the state. The second page officially reinstated Angela and Aubrey's legal last name as Roberts. We spent the rest of the week resolving legal matters, starting with a visit to the Federal Records Office, followed by the State Attorney's Office to restore their birth certificates, and finally, a trip to the State Licensing Center for new driver's licenses. One of the most satisfying moments was re-enrolling Aubrey in her old school and facing the principal, who had once treated me unfairly. On Thursday, our final task was getting new cell phones for both girls. On Friday, Angela and Aubrey accompanied us to the dealership, where Alice allowed me to trade in her car and Angela's for new ones. Both girls received 2019 Ford Escapes on a lease-to-own plan through the company. Back at home, I wrote Angela a check for the trade-in value to help with the down payment. Later that day, my divorce lawyer called to inform me that our court hearing had been scheduled for Monday at 1 p.m. For the first time in 5 years, my daughters and I would be in court together. I asked Alice if she wanted to join us, and she agreed without hesitation. When we appeared before Judge Reed, Jennifer was shown on a large monitor. Dressed in a plain prison uniform, she looked like a completely different person, a far cry from her usual flashy appearance. The judge began by questioning her attorney about the contempt charge. Her lawyer claimed she hadn't understood the requirement to attend court that day. The judge was unimpressed. "Did you remind her repeatedly during the settlement process?" he asked. "Yes," the lawyer responded. Are you so incompetent that you genuinely believe your client might be telling the truth?" The lawyer flushed with embarrassment before answering. "No. How does your client plead?" the judge demanded. "No contest, Your Honor," the lawyer replied. Without delay, the judge delivered his decision. "I sentence her to 5 years, to be served after any federal time," he declared without sympathy. Her lawyer protested. "Your Honor, isn't that excessive?" "Not from where I stand," the judge replied curtly. "But she can appeal," he added. Turning his attention to the divorce, he stated, "The divorce is granted in favor of Mr. Roberts. All remaining assets are awarded to him. She forfeited her rights the moment she left the state, with her minor daughters." Addressing my attorney, the judge instructed, "Draft the divorce decree and include a waiver for the mandatory waiting period. Your client has waited long enough." "My client has one additional request," my lawyer interjected. The judge raised an eyebrow. "And what would that be?" he asked. Glancing at me, my lawyer explained. "He's recently become engaged to Miss Alice Garcia and would like to know if you'd be willing to officiate their civil ceremony." "R'n't they get married?" my lawyer exclaimed. Alice and the girls nearly jumped out of their seats with excitement. I smiled, knowing this request had been carefully planned between my lawyer and me, hoping for exactly this reaction. If the judge approved, and my lawyer would use the funds held in trust to pay off the car leases, transfer ownership to Alice and the girls, and write me a check for the remaining balance. I'd be honored. Congratulations to them both. It's long overdue, the judge said with a broad grin. On the monitor, Jennifer's expression briefly flashed shock, as if she had expected a lenient outcome, but was blindsided instead. It must have hurt to discover I was marrying her younger cousin. With the bang of a gavel, the judge announced, "Court is adjourned." As we stood to leave, the judge came over and warmly shook my hand. I introduced him to my future wife and daughters with all the respect he deserved. "I'm off the bench now, so just call me Salmon," he said kindly. Before we left, he leaned in to add, "William, we need to plan a fly fishing trip soon, before the weather gets too hot." As we exited the courtroom, my daughters chatted non-stop, their laughter and excitement filling the air. I hadn't realized how much I missed that lively energy until I found myself wishing for earplugs. Out of the corner of my eye, I noticed a couple slipping quietly out of the courtroom. My heart sank when I realized it was my parents. My father's harsh words from when he disowned me echoed in my mind. Forgiveness is easy, but forgetting is not. I was starting to understand just how true those words were. Back at home, the house buzzed with wedding plans, filling it with a new kind of energy. Alice put her home on the market, while Angela settled into her new job at my company. She quickly impressed everyone with her sharp intellect, while Aubrey reconnected with old friends. Meanwhile, the consulting firm became busier than ever, securing contracts with 2 major corporations that needed comprehensive restructuring. Angela surprised us all by identifying costly inefficiencies that had previously gone unnoticed, turning things around within just 3 weeks and leading to a surge in sales for our client. One night, as Alice and I lay in bed, she brought up a surprising topic. "You know, love, my biological clock is ticking," she said, looking at me with her gentle eyes. "How long do you think we should wait before trying for 1 or 2 of our own?" I hadn't thought about it, but after everything we'd been through together, I couldn't say no. As long as you're not sharing in the wedding pictures, I'll leave that up to you, I teased, with a grin. Needless to say, we didn't get much sleep that night. We set our wedding date for Mother's Day, keeping it small and intimate with the lake as our backdrop. Angela was my maid of honor, while Aubrey and one of Alice's nieces served as bridesmaids. Lenny was my best man, with 2 nephews acting as ushers. Alice's brothers helped prepare the yard, and Judge Reed officiated the ceremony beneath an arbor of spring flowers. We kept it simple. The men wore blue jeans, cowboy hats, and matching boots, while the ladies donned flowing gowns. Alice looked stunning in a classic white dress, while her bridesmaids wore cheerful yellow. Her extended family provided a barbecue feast, and by evening the patio transformed into a dance floor with live music. Life carried on as Jennifer and Nesta's criminal trial got underway, and Nesta filed for divorce. Meanwhile, my civil lawyer coordinated with their legal teams and the bank's attorneys regarding our case. With Father's Day approaching, I suspected Alice and my daughters were planning something special, but I had no idea what it was. On the morning of Father's Day, Alice and I went fishing at dawn. The fish were biting so well that we reached our limit within an hour. Just as we were about to head back, Alice handed me a card. When I opened it, I was stunned to read the message, "Happy Father's Day, Daddy, we're pregnant and it's a boy." Overcome with excitement, I jumped up and accidentally flipped the canoe, sending us and all our gear into the water. We lost everything. The fish, the poles, even the tackle box. By the time we paddled back, completely soaked, Alice was laughing. When the girls heard how I found out the news, they couldn't stop laughing either. Apparently, they'd known about Alice's pregnancy for a while. It took some time for life to settle, but nothing could compare to the peace I felt watching my son come into the world. He arrived loudly, weighing 7 pounds. Unexpectedly, I found myself calling my mother from the maternity ward. When she arrived, I took her to Alice's room, where she was cradling our son. "His name is Colin," I told her. My mother broke down, overwhelmed, as Colin had been her grandfather's name. As for my father and me, we still didn't speak. He would have to make the first move, and so far he hadn't. But each day is a new beginning, and life moves forward.